VCY America presents Crosstalk, a nationwide call-in program discussing issues that have an effect on our families, our communities, our churches, our nation, and our world. Crosstalk, an opportunity for you to voice your concerns for biblical principles. And now live by satellite and around the world on the internet at vcyamerica.org. Here is today's Crosstalk.
And thank you for joining us on Crosstalk today. It's a News Roundup Friday and a comment program today. Again, much taking place through the course of this week. And we'll seek to cover as many stories as possible, but the inches of stories exceed the minutes of time. So we'll get as much in as we can on the broadcast today, and Lord willing, have an opportunity for you a little bit later to enter into the discussion as well here on Crosstalk. Our thanks to Sandy for putting together the stories and the content here for us this week, and Molly working the phones here, and Dennis in the control room. We're grateful for our team here at VCY America. We're going to begin in the Middle East once again. The Jerusalem Post reporting the statement made by the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, saying Israel rejects the 15-point Gaza document proposed by the Board of Peace. The IDF will not carry out any withdrawal until Hamas is genuinely disarmed. He also reiterated his opposition to the establishment of the Palestinian state. He said, as for the Gaza Strip, first of all, I want to make the point clear. As long as I'm prime minister, there will be no Palestinian state, not in Gaza, not in Judea and Samaria, and mentions other locations as well. He added that Israel is currently in talks with the U.S. about the disarmament of Hamas, but it would need to be a genuine disarmament, not fictitious disarmament. Just the News reporting President Trump Monday reacted to the Iranian demand that the U.S. compensate Tehran for the damage it sustained in the ongoing Iran war by demanding that Iran in turn pay restitution for Americans that they have killed over many years. The president posted on Truth Social, he said, I'm likewise demanding compensation from Iran for all the people that they have killed and gravely wounded with their roadside bombs and many conflicts for which they are famous, as led initially by General Soleimani, including the families of those killed on the USS Cole and thousands of others killed in combat. Additionally, compensation should be paid to the families of the hundreds of thousands of innocent protesters that Iran has killed over the past 50 years, not to mention the 52,000 that have been killed in the last 5 months. I've instructed my representatives to put this firmly into any and all future negotiations. From Just the News, President Trump Wednesday insisted that the U.S. currently maintains total control of the Strait of Hormuz. Reopening the critical waterway has been a priority war goal for the U.S. Worthy News telling us the U.S. has publicly rejected Israeli Defense Minister Israel's Katz declaration that Israeli troops will remain in southern Lebanon for the long term. Katz, speaking during a visit to Israeli forces operating in the Lebanese border villages, said that the Israeli Defense Forces were preparing operationally and logistically for an extended deployment aimed at eliminating Hezbollah tunnels, weapons positions, and other terrorist infrastructure. He mentioned that it's important that Israel's military presence is necessary to prevent another large-scale cross-border assault similar to what happened in October 7th. Just the News telling us U.S. officials confirmed Wednesday that the U.S. military will finish withdrawing its troops from Iraq by the end of September, which will complete an occupation in the Middle East country that began in the year 2003. Newsmax reporting that a Syrian court sentenced ousted Syrian President Bashar Assad, along with his younger brother, to death in absentia on Tuesday for crimes against humanity and war crimes during Syria's 14-year conflict that left about 500,000 people dead. The sentences at the Fourth Criminal Court in Damascus are the first against Assad or members of his inner circle since her family's 5 decades in power came to an end 20 months ago. Also sentenced to death in the same case was his maternal cousin. Assad and his brother fled to Russia after the government's fall in December of 24 and received political asylum. Syria's new rulers have asked Russia to hand the Assads over. Just the News telling us that the Trump administration has reached agreement with Syria and Israel for the International Atomic Energy Agency to remove nuclear material stored at a covert site in Syria. That's according to U.S. and Israeli officials. The deal comes as the Trump administration and the IAEA were rushing to reach a diplomatic agreement to secure the material. U.S. officials also said that the event indicated that the growing closeness of the U.S. and the new Syrian government under Ahmad al-Sharaa, that is according to Axios. Jihad Watch reporting Pakistan's defense minister has called for Islamic nations to set aside their differences and join Islamabad's defense agreement with Saudi Arabia and Turkey to form a military alliance along the lines of NATO. Talking to GO News, he said that the Mecca Joint Defense Agreement shouldn't be an exclusive club and urged Islamic nations to put their differences aside and to join the pact. Pakistan is the world's primary enforcer of Islamic blasphemy laws. It's a state sponsor of terrorism, holds an estimated 170 nuclear warheads, and is steadily modernizing its arsenal. And the new Islamic NATO is a Sunni powerhouse in the making, could be a catastrophic development for the interest of America and more broadly in the West, as well as for Israel. And then we think about those fighter jets as well that are looking to be sold to Pakistan, or rather to Turkey. Jihad Watch is reporting Colombia becomes the second country to recognize Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights and now joined the U.S. Colombia has recognized Israel's sovereignty. They just announced this past Monday, their foreign ministry. In a statement released on X, the ministry stated that it recognizes Israeli control over the area as an essential component of its national defense and its ability to protect and safeguard its citizens. The recognition resulted from a commitment made by both Israel and Colombia on Saturday, the ministry had said. And looking back to the beginning of this week, the U.S. Senate adjourned last weekend after that long night of votes and a debate failing to pass one of President Trump's most pressing priorities, the Save America Act. Some Save American provisions were attached to a House-passed budget bill that senators and the president agreed to postpone until after their 5-week recess. The Gateway pundit telling us that John Thune sends the Senate home for 37 days, but scheduled 11 pro forma sessions to block President Trump from making any recess appointments. Instead of doing the work of the American people, they report, John Thune is sending the United States Senate home. But it gets worse. Thune isn't just going on vacation. He's purposely scheduling 11 fake pro forma sessions during the break. The Senate gavelled into its first pro forma session Monday, August 10th at 10 a.m. Under the schedule approved before senators fled Washington, a lone senator will periodically open and close the chamber while no legislative business is expected. Regular Senate business will resume on September the 14th. Wonderful news coming today. This from CBN. An American missionary who was kidnapped last October has been released. Kevin Rideout was seized in the West African nation of Niger on October 21st by 3 gunmen. The 50-year-old missionary pilot was on his way back to the United States, and he is reported now to be in good health in the care of U.S. officials, according to the missionary group SIM International. No armed group claimed responsibility for his kidnapping, and the full details surrounding his release are unclear. But the New York Times reports his release had been a priority for the White House since his abduction. Also, Just the News reporting President Trump Tuesday announced he had reached an agreement with Russian President Putin to secure the release of American citizen Robert Gilman, whom the Russians imprisoned back in 2022, saying, "I'm proud to announce that American citizen Robert Gilman, a former U.S. Marine, is coming home." It was also that no exchange took place. After his release, Secretary of State Marco Rubio pointed out that Mr. Gilman joins over 100 Americans whom President Trump has freed during his second term in office. Well, many of you were watching the primaries this past Tuesday, and the winners and losers in all of this. Some of the takeaways from this, the Christian Post reported, number one, Lindsey Graham's sister advances to the runoff. Unofficial results show Graham Nordon is taking 32.7% of the vote, while Representative Ralph Norman captured 24.6% of the vote. They will have a runoff election taking place on August the 25th. Also, the progressive gubernatorial candidate narrowly loses in Wisconsin. This self-proclaimed Democratic socialist that won a week ago, Abdul El-Sayed, won the Democratic nomination in the U.S. Senate in Michigan. However, the unofficial results from Wisconsin this past Tuesday showed Democratic Socialist Francesca Hong taking 39.3% of the vote in the Democratic primary, coming in behind the winner, David Crowley, at 39.8%. Just 0.5 of a percentage point differential between the two. And that, again, all waiting for its final certification to take place. Item number 3 was Mike Lindell, lost in Minnesota, but refuses to concede, according to their report. Lisa DeMuth won the Republican nomination for governor. Mike Lindell was endorsed by President Trump. We knew him often as the CEO of MyPillow, but it shows that she captured 43.4% of the vote to Lindell's 32.5%. And also a progressive won the Democratic nomination for Senate seat in Minnesota. Unofficial results from the Democratic primary in the U.S. Senate race in Minnesota showed Peggy Flanagan beating Representative Angie Craig by nearly 20 percentage points. Also, very interesting matters that are going on. We see here also that there was a situation of, Fox News pointing out that the Michigan Democratic Senate nominee Abdul El-Sayed appeared this past Sunday on Meet the Press, and NBC News host Kristen Welker asked him about his support for Medicare for All and whether Americans need to worry about paying more taxes to make that possible. Here's that exchange.
Policy agenda on law enforcement is to defund police, ultimately to policy.
I tell you what, we're going to come back to that one. Here it is.
Just to be very clear, you're describing this trade-off. You are effectively acknowledging that people making less than $1 million could see their taxes go up. I just want to be very clear. Is that a yes?
I'm saying that we'd be paying for health care in a different way. Instead of paying a health insurance company whose CEO makes $20 million, I would much rather pay for durable health care into a government, which, of course, we all know provides health care for seniors who need health care the most. So if I'm trading paying a CEO to make more money or paying government to guarantee me health care, I'm picking the latter every time.
Okay. So,
Miranda, how could we afford it?
Yeah, that was the question that they went on in the commentary. How can we afford it? And paying the government more in taxes, and El-Sayed admitting free health care means paying a little bit more in taxes regardless of your income. Also, an interesting story came out from the Washington Free Beacon, and that is the Michigan Democratic Senate nominee now, Abdul El-Sayed, once declared that his sacred obligation to follow Sharia in every aspect of his life until he meets his maker on the day he dies. That's according to comments he made to the New York Times back in 2009 as a young man buying his first home. Our obligation to follow Sharia until the day he dies. Lord willing, this coming Monday on Crosstalk, we'll be joined by Dr. Gary Frazier, who's been monitoring the situation of the advancement of Islam across the United States, specifically what's happening in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Dr. Frazier is scheduled to join us on Monday, and Lord willing, we'll be getting more into those issues in just a couple of days from now. Also, coming up after the break, we're going to find out from a Democratic Socialist of America's spokesperson, Frances Gill, on this, as she was challenged about defunding the police. Back in a minute here on Crosstalk.
Back to Genesis with Dr. John Morris, geologist and president of the Institute for Creation Research. Dr. Morris, are spiders ever found in the fossil record?
Yes, unbelievably, Chris, they are. Not only spiders, but sometimes spider webs are found. A spider and its web was found in amber, which was dated by evolutionists at 190 million years old. Now, I don't buy the date. I think the amber was formed at the time of Noah's flood. But think how silly this makes the millions of years idea look. Spider silk is so fragile, it dehydrates and deteriorates quite quickly. Does anybody really think it's going to last for 190 million years? Chris, a better idea is out there. It's the back to Genesis idea of creation and the flood.
If you'd like to go back to Genesis, you can find us on the web at www.icr.org. For the Institute for Creation Research, I'm Chris O'Brien. Thanks for tuning in.
This is Crosstalk on VCY America, Friday News Roundup and Comment. So many issues going on, and very interesting from the Washington Free Beacon. Just came out a few days ago as well. Photos showing a grinning Abdul al-Sayed buddying up with the Nation of Islam ministers who rallied against the Jews and defended Farrakhan. And we understand that the key Nation of Islam figure was backstage at his election night watch party. And friends, do not be fooled as to who is standing up for that particular campaign. Now, it's also interesting to watch what is going on with the Democratic Socialist of America. In the category, I'm looking at an article from WND.com that came out earlier this week. In the category of not ready for prime time, another spokeswoman for the Democratic Socialist of America struggled to explain the group's radical agenda, in this case, the desire to defund police and close jails and prisons. They don't deny this, but they often start talking about funding. Well, it was Los Angeles' NBC anchor Conan Nolan who interviewed DSA National Political Committee member Francis Gill this past Sunday. Listen to their discussion as it transpired.
Policy agenda on law enforcement is to defund police, ultimately to get rid of police departments, correct?
Well, what I would say is that we're dramatically overspending on police right now.
I understand, but the goal is to defund the police departments so we don't need them in the future.
I think it's what we really want to see is a horizon where folks are not reliant on armed enforcement to meet our public safety needs.
Right, but it says defund police on the website. That's your goal. And also to get rid of prisons and jails, correct?
Yes.
So if my daughter is assaulted and raped, is there any agency that would seek to find her assailant and bring him to justice?
Of course, yeah, of course.
What
absolutely.
would it be if not police, and where would he be if not a jail?
So I guess I really want to avoid getting kind of caught into these hypotheticals and talk more about the reality that we're actually facing right now, which is that we're spending absolutely outrageous amounts of money on police and policing, and we're not spending money on things that actually make people safe and feel safe, which is things like actually well-lit streets. The streetlights in Los Angeles, everybody agrees it's a huge problem. Things like mental health care and substance use treatment. So things that drive people to commit crimes and to that make our society less safe. We're not doing anything about the root causes, and instead we're funneling money into the police. You
know, it's interesting. If we just had more well-lit streets, I mean, we would not be having rapes across this nation. As the NBC anchor, approached her and if his daughter were raped, then, if it wasn't for the police and it wasn't for jail, where would he be? And she had to scramble. Well, let's not deal with hypotheticals. But the problem is that's not a hypothetical. It is happening day after day after day all across these United States of America. And when it comes down to where the rubber meets the road on this issue, there's a scrambling. And do we, the question that the American people have to ask themselves, do we want to live in a society in which there are no enforcers of the law? And for those who violate the laws, do we want to live in a position where there are not jails and prisons to give justice to those who have been victimized? Against those who have victimized others is what I meant to say. So very important, and that's going to become a major part of discussion as it relates to so many of these candidates that are advancing through the Democratic Socialist of America. And they, on the previous clip we've heard here on Crosstalk, indicated that, no, we are not, we've told that and don't vote third party, so we're coming within the Democratic Party. Tragedy this past week also in Bogota, Colombia. Powerful 7.4 magnitude earthquake struck western Colombia on Monday. Saw some of the latest numbers reporting the death toll increasing to some 285 individuals. Well, this is from Jihad Watch. A prominent Shiite cleric in Michigan celebrated the death of Lindsey Graham, who also asked worshipers to pray for the death of Donald Trump, later urging Muslims to elect Abdul al-Sayed, who indeed went on to win the Democratic nomination for the state Senate seat. Mohammed Bakr Kazwini made the comments during a Friday sermon at the Islamic Institute of America in Dearborn Heights this couple weeks before the election. and told worshippers he had awakened to very good news following Graham's death, and that Allah had taken the senator's soul to hell. Jihad Watch is reporting that London-based Muslim Brotherhood member accused of living a double life as a terror financier by funneling cash to Hamas through 2 sham charities. To his neighbors in a northwest London suburb, he is simply the soft-spoken, bespectacled old man, but unbeknownst to any of them, Mahmoud al-Abrari has been secretly living a double life, claiming that the 74-year-old is a senior leader of the Muslim Brotherhood, the global extremist group that U.S. banned as a terrorist entity in January. Despite U.S. sanctions, he remains free to move about London unchallenged. Washington Times reporting that federal prosecutors said Wednesday that they disrupted one of the biggest marriage fraud rings in U.S. history that orchestrated more than 1,000 bogus unions over a decade in the hopes of getting green cards. Officials said the ring earned tens of millions of dollars, charging up to $100,000 to arrange sham marriages for Chinese citizens, paying up to $30,000 for Americans willing to marry them. 11 people, 10 of them naturalized citizens, and the other a legal permanent resident, were named in the newly unsealed indictment. Authorities described the remarkable steps the outfit went to, including fabricating photos to try and make it look like wedding ceremonies were held, opening joint accounts for the so-called couples, and purchasing life insurance. The goal, prosecutors said, was to create a false history to fool immigration officials. Not only that going on, but the Epoch Times also reporting that the China Mifu Baby group website Translation excitedly shared the news. U.S. Supreme Court decision finalized birth tourism babies still become citizens. Well, on its website, the group displayed photos of tastefully decorated bedrooms in pastel blue, pink, and green under the heading American Postnatal Care Center in Irvine, California. Prices range from $43,800 for a 2-bedroom, 1-bath villa, $33,800 for a mid-range suite. With the increasing demand for childbirth in the U.S., more and more expectant mothers in China are planning to give birth there. Another Chinese birth tourism company displays a large image of a pregnant Chinese woman with an American flag in the background on its site, where it advertises packages for overseas medical treatment for childbirth in the U.S., listing partner hospitals in the U.S. and recommended obstetricians. Fox News reporting President Donald Trump's State Department is dumping the Biden-era guidelines that directed personnel to push a woke, diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility agenda on foreign nationals and governments. Under the Trump administration, America's diplomats are tasked with advocating for national interest on the world stage, not demonstrating adherence to woke political dogmas, said the State Department spokesperson Tommy Bigot as he told Fox News Digital. Just the News reporting of White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt announced Wednesday she will be leaving the Trump administration at the end of August, saying she wants to spend more time with her children. She gave birth to her second child. Prior to serving as press secretary, she was a lead spokeswoman for the Trump campaign. She said being a mother and welcoming a new baby while working in one of the most demanding jobs in the world has been the most rewarding yet challenging season of my life. The truth is, since returning to the White House after the birth of my daughter, I have felt in my heart I cannot be the best mom to 2 young children that they deserve while devoting the constant time, energy, and attention required of the White House press secretary. And that is why I have ultimately made the bittersweet decision to depart the White House and embark on a new chapter in my life. President Trump himself offered praise for her service. Also in news, of course, has been the testimony that came forth from Dr. Fauci, which we have shared excerpts here on Crosstalk. He is the former director of the National Institutes for Allergy and Infectious Diseases, but amid his revelations of the lack of honesty, there is so much more that has come forth, even in the past week, as it relates to a text showing that he thought one thing but was saying another to American mothers. And part of that was giving women who are expecting babies the COVID shot, even though he had been acknowledging risk of miscarriage from this. So just one little clip in which the director, Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, was on Fox News addressing some of these very issues.
The new text release from Dr. Fauci's phone seems to be a different message privately than what he was telling publicly about the vaccine in pregnant women.
I mean, I'm really glad that his words now can be heard by the American people. And I share your concern. I think that when you have a new product like the COVID vaccine was back then, you should be careful with pregnant women. And it's shocking to me that that he was sharing private thoughts, and that when he was out on public, and he was out in public a lot, he didn't share those private thoughts with the American public. I mean, to me, the big problem now is really, how do you restore trust in public health? How do you restore trust in science? And, you know, that's what I've been working toward at the NIH, to really shift toward a transparent regime where there's scientific debate, scientific discussion, no debates off limits. I fully expect there to be people that disagree with me. And when I learn that I'm wrong, I'm going to tell the American public that I'm wrong. We have to turn the page from that.
And you have the job that he once had. That puts pregnant women in a really bad position. You're withholding information from them, giving them a recommendation that could potentially harm their baby. I don't know the process when you're the director of something like the NIH, but if you have reservations, shouldn't the public know those reservations?
I mean, especially for something like the COVID shots, which were brand new back then. I mean, and Tony Fauci was a major figure in trying to get those COVID shots off, past the finish line. He owed the American public some transparency regarding his honest thoughts. Generally, it's the FDA that regulates products and checks for side effects and so on. The NIH develops the science that produces the new vaccines. There's usually like one lane and another lane. Tony Fauci, in some sense, was out of his lane, push and then use that power to tell American one thing when he really thought another.
Okay, Dr. Bhattacharya sitting in there on Fox News being interviewed there, and the likes of Dr. Fauci's testimony, or lack thereof, I should say, and his written remarks in the diary, his text and communications going back and forth as well. Much more to be exposed on that. And again, we'll be, Lord willing, getting into more of this next Tuesday on Crosstalk with Barbara Lowe Fisher as our guest from the National Vaccine Information Center, even as President Trump has brought a change to the matter of the childhood vaccination schedule. President Trump signed an executive order this past Monday, reports thecentersquare.com, that challenges the federal government's recommendations for the childhood vaccine schedule, spacing some vaccines further apart and eliminating others altogether. According to the president, the order reduces the number of childhood core vaccination recommendations to 11. That's down from the 18 recommended under the Biden administration. It also recommends that the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine be administered separately once individual vaccines become available in the United States. Again, if all goes as planned here in our schedule, Barbara Lowe Fisher will be with us from the National Vaccine Information Center next Tuesday on Crosstalk, and we'll be getting into that. We'll be talking about Dr. Fauci, her response to matters that continue to unfold with him, as well as the measles outbreak that's occurring in many states across the United States. So, Lord willing, that coming up on Tuesday. Much more news after the break. You're listening to Crosstalk.
Is it really that important that we be aware of the signs of the times? Do Christians agree about the role of America in Bible prophecy? Is there biblical evidence that the church will escape the tribulation period? These are just a few of the many questions addressed in the Bible Prophecy Answer Book by Ron Rhodes. Whether you're looking for a quick instruction or you're eager to go deeper, this book will help you navigate prophetic scripture to better understand matters of eternal significance. You'll learn about Israel's rebirth, the Ezekiel invasion, the rapture, the judgment seat of Christ, the Antichrist, Armageddon, the Great White Throne Judgment, and much more. VCY is offering the Bible Prophecy Answer Book for a donation of $18. Call 1-800-729-9829. 1-800-729-9829.
This is Crosstalk on VCY America. It's a Friday News Roundup and Comment program, and we'll cover a number more issues here in this segment as well, taking a look at a number of life-related stories and other matters. We're going to continue with an article from Bearing Arms. It has a very significant meaning behind it. There are enough kids in the foster system, many of whom end up in truly dangerous situations with predatory individuals, that would seem no one should be trying to make it harder for good, decent people to take in children. Unfortunately, there's been an effort to keep gun owners from being able to foster these kids. About a week ago Tuesday, I think it was a federal judge in Illinois, upheld some pretty awful restrictions on gun owners who want to be foster parents, but in Wisconsin, a court just smacked similar laws down. Parents who sign up to be foster families don't cede their Second Amendment rights, the Wisconsin Appeals Court has ruled. The case involved Brian and Katie Lafferty, who clashed with Wisconsin's Department of Children and Families and a local county human services department. The officials had argued that the parents signed away their gun rights when they applied to foster use. Well, the three-judge panel said that was wrong, saying, "We conclude the Laffertys did not waive their constitutional rights by volunteering to serve as foster parents." That was a statement from Judge Maria Lazar. The county has initially imposed demands that those seeking to be licensed as foster families where concealed carry permits could not carry their guns when in the presence of foster children, must store their guns behind two locks with ammunition kept in separate place, and must disclose all of their firearms and their locations to the county. Well, the appellate court has struck that down. We'll see if that advances to the United States Supreme Court. WND.com, federal authorities confirmed that a suspect now is in custody for allegedly vandalizing the World War II Memorial in Washington, D.C. It was Janine Pirro, the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, who confirmed that felony charges are pending. The suspect, according to reports, was identified as Melissa Ferris, who faces counts of degrading the property of the United States and destruction of veterans' memorials. The possible penalties include up to 10 years behind bars. The Friends of the National World War II Memorial, a nonprofit group dedicated to preserving the memorial, called the vandalism unacceptable, saying the memorial was a sacred place of remembrance. We understand also the White House is seeking new charges in the dropped reflecting pool case. And again, we'll see if that happens with the new Attorney General, Todd Blanche. Let's see. The Gateway Pundit reporting baby Gabriel was born in Texas on Wednesday after his surrogate mother bravely refused demands from his biological parents to abort him over a treatable heart condition. His birth comes one day after Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton stepped in to secure legal protections, ensuring the baby would receive life-saving care. Immediately following his birth, the newborn was transported to NICU for treatment of his hypoplastic left heart syndrome, a serious congenital defect that had been diagnosed at about 20 weeks of pregnancy. The surrogate, McKenna West, an Alaska nurse and single mother of two, had entered into a surrogacy agreement through Worldwide Surrogacy Specialists with the California couple. The pregnancy proceeded normally until the anatomy scan revealed the diagnosis of the left heart condition. The intended parents invoked the abortion provision in their agreement and attempted to force her to terminate the pregnancy, to kill the baby. When doctors in Alaska declined to perform a high-risk late-term abortion, arrangements were made for her to travel for the procedure elsewhere. She refused and saved his life. She researched the condition, learned of the expertise available in Texas, relocated to Dallas County. West even offered to assume full responsibility for the child or arrange adoption, releasing the couple from further obligations, but the biological parents rejected her plea. Instead, the parents pursued legal action aiming to compel her to give birth in California, where they could withhold consent for the necessary surgeries. They wanted to let him die. Paxton's office stepped in the day before baby Gabriel's birth. Paxton filed a motion asking the district court to ensure orders directly the baby's medical care, directing them upon birth, barring his removal from the state, and setting an expedited hearing if the intended parents refuse consent for the treatment. Again, baby Gabriel has been born. LifeNews.com reporting Nevada voters will decide in November whether to approve Question 6, a proposed constitutional amendment that would create an unlimited right to kill babies in abortion through all 9 months of pregnancy. That includes unhealthy mothers, healthy babies. The measure would establish that all individuals shall have a fundamental right to abortion. LifeSiteNews.com reporting former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg is donating more than $1 million to defeat a campaign to undo Missouri's constitutional right to abortion, part of the billionaire's effort to support abortion on demand across America. Washington Examiner says Massachusetts joined 9 other states and Washington, D.C. this past Monday by removing all gestational age limits for abortion. Governor Healy on Monday signed a bill passed by the state legislature at the end of July that allows for elective abortion through all weeks of pregnancy based upon the professional judgment of a medical doctor performing the abortion. We believe that healthcare decisions should be made between women and families and their doctors, not politicians, Healy said. Well, Massachusetts now joins. By the way, after the governor signed this, you heard the round of applause. You heard the giggling, the laughter taking place in Massachusetts. They now join Alaska, Colorado, Maryland, Michigan, Minnesota, New Jersey, New Mexico, Oregon, Vermont, and Washington, D.C. in eliminating gestational age limits for abortion. Friends, abortion should not take place at any level of development. Life is life beginning at conception. LifeNews.com, Planned Parenthood just announced a $47 million budget for their midterm election blitz. ACLU is spending some $25 million specifically to push pro-abortion propaganda, and Reproductive Freedom for All, that's formerly NARAL, spending $23.5 billion. That's nearly $23.5 million, but that's nearly $100 million, all aimed at one goal: flipping the U.S. Senate. That would be for what? Chuck Schumer, his pals at the Democratic Socialists of America, and the abortion lobby this coming November. Tragically, a 31-week-old unborn baby had been put into, had been tried. They sought to abort this baby with the abortion kill, but on the bright side, this baby survived the abortion attempt. 2 North Carolina teens facing felony charges after the 18-year-old mother allegedly took abortion pills at 31 weeks of pregnancy in an attempt to end the life of the unborn child, resulting in the premature birth of the baby into a toilet. LifeNews.com, doctors at Texas Children's Hospital successfully performed what they describe as the first surgery of its kind in the United States in an unborn baby to correct a severe intestinal defect. Theo French, now 5 months old, diagnosed at his mother's 20-week ultrasound with complex condition in which the baby's intestines develop outside the body through an opening in the abdominal wall. The defect left the children's organs exposed to the amniotic fluid, risking severe damage. But they were able to perform surgery, first ever surgery in the womb, to stop the intestines from growing outside the body. This one is a very, very tragic story, and I'm going to share a lot of details from this LifeNews.com story of an 83-year-old Canadian grandmother euthanized under the country's Medical Assistance in Dying program, MAID, on July 10th, 2026, despite having previously declined it because of her Christian faith and without proving what her family describes as a final verbal confirmation of consent. Bridget Stegman, known lovingly to her family as Gigi, died by lethal injection at the Pearl, that's formerly the E.J. McQuiggy Lodge, a long-term care facility in Belleville, Ontario, where she had lived for the previous 2 years. She had been diagnosed with untreatable stage 4 stomach cancer after about 5 months earlier. Her granddaughter, also named Bridget, held legal powers of attorney and had served as her primary caregiver and advocate for more than 12 years. Facility staff routinely contacted the granddaughter for decisions about medications, treatments, and daily care. Approximately 2 months before her death, Stegman was asked about medical assistance in dying. According to her family's public statement, she clearly stated she did not wish to pursue it. As a devout Christian, she said the practice conflicted with her personal beliefs and faith. She wanted to die naturally. While the granddaughter was away on a 10-day vacation, the facility staff held private discussions with Stegman about MAID without informing her family or any advocate. The family was never given a clear answer about who initiated those conversations, a serious concern given Stegman's diminished capacity, having a severe hearing impairment. She was completely deaf in her left ear, had very limited hearing in the right, and frequent periods of lethargy, that is, and unresponsiveness. Well, when the formal assessment occurred on July 6th and 7th, the family described her sudden alertness after days of near unresponsiveness, and during the capacity evaluation, the physician had to repeat questions repeatedly because of her hearing loss. Stegeman repeatedly gave incorrect answers to basic questions about her own life. When asked if she had any siblings, she said she had none, though she was second youngest of 14 children. She also said that none of her siblings were still alive, even though some still were, and she had spoken with one the previous week. She became disoriented, began to cry, and said, "I forgot about the grandkids," confusing her living siblings with her great-grandchildren. The family corrected the vast majority of her questions and her answers, and the granddaughter objected directly, questioning how Stegeman could possibly be deemed capable of consenting to her own death. The physician explained the procedure in language the family found euphemistic and misleading for an elderly woman of Stegeman's background, describing it as receiving medication, feeling peace, falling asleep, and promising she would not lose control of her bowels. Well, the family then was ordered to leave the room. The power of attorney's holder's request to remain was denied. When the physician emerged, she stated flatly, "I have deemed her capable of making her own decisions," and informed the family that Stegeman had consented. Procedure scheduled for July 10th, the family was left shocked and distressed, later discovered that the death date had been set before any official MAID application paperwork was completed. Facility staff, including the home manager, then filled out and witnessed the forms themselves without notifying the power of attorney, despite the family's daily visits. On July 8th, the date was briefly advanced by a full day simply because the physician had an opening in her schedule. The home manager admitted she had personally completed the paperwork. In the morning of July 10th, the family took Stegeman outside to the patio for fresh air and a scoop of her favorite strawberry ice cream while waiting for her pastor to arrive. Her clear wishes to be surrounded by family, have her pastor present, were treated as secondary to the schedule of the doctor. Friends, again, it was amazing what lengths they went through to try and force this decision out of a woman who had flatly denied wanting to have this medical assistance in dying, the MAID. And more prevalent this is becoming in Canada, and more prevalent it's happening in states across the United States as well. And now LifeSiteNews.com reporting 3 doctors published a paper in a top medical journal pushing for death by organ donation, where people undergoing euthanasia would be killed by having their organs removed. The paper is titled Contextualizing Dead Donor Role in an Era of Voluntary Euthanasia, published in the New England Journal of Medicine in early July. The co-author stated that the paper that in death by organ donation, the patient's authorization, experience, and outcome are not altered by whether death occurs moments before or during the organ retrieval. And by the way, scientists, a study published calls for the Earth's population to be cut in half to 4 billion people to achieve a sustainable planet. Wow. Friends, we're going to take a break, and let's come back. If you have questions, or rather comments, if you'd like to comment on these or other current event stories, giving you an opportunity to make comment. And I know there are things happening in your neck of the woods that you'd like to bring to the attention of our listeners as well. Our number, 800-733-9829. That's 800-733-9829. Back in a minute here on Crosstalk.
For the Worldview Report, I'm Brennan House. Our website's worldviewtube.com. Studying Revelation chapter 19 should give us great insight into this battle over Israel and Jerusalem that goes on today. What a historic location. Think about this. Jesus Christ playing on the Mount of Olives as a child, beginning his ministry at the age of 30, and then the Olivet Discourse, teaching his disciples what is to come right there on the Mount of Olives. And then he ascends into heaven from there. And the angel says he'll return once again and put his foot on that very mountain, the Mount of Olives. In fact, the scriptures tell us in Revelation 19, the mountains will split and provide a way of escape for those believers who are being sought and persecuted. Isn't this fascinating? History revolves around Israel and Jerusalem. And yet we see the stage being set for the world turning against Israel and Jerusalem even now. I'm Brennan House for the Worldview Report.
This is Crosstalk. It's a news roundup and comment Friday. And if you'd like to comment on these news stories today or simply inform the audience of things happening in your neck of the woods and comment on it, here's your opportunity. So many times during, why don't you do a program on this? I'm concerned about this, or I'm concerned about that. Friends, here's your opportunity to call in to share that concern. 800-733-9829. By the way, lifenews.com reporting that starting on September 12th, the state of Illinois is pushing suicide on patients. This is the new assisted suicide law in the state of Illinois. We understand a doctors group has filed a lawsuit to try and stop this from taking place. Also, the state of Virginia, the abortion ballot measure is now heading to the Court of Appeals. Liberty Counsel has appealed to the Court of Appeals of Virginia to dismiss the court order. The lower court said to dismiss their legal challenge. Liberty Counsel fighting to preserve that legal challenge taking place here regarding that issue on the ballot. Our number to crosstalk, 800-733-9829. We have Barry calling from Tennessee. Barry, you're on the air.
Yeah, Jim, a lot of times we act like some strange thing has happened and all this stuff just happens by happenstance. But, things just don't happen, by happenstance. How it works is as the church retreats, the devil advances. As the church retreats from the prayers and seeking God and praying, preaching that uncompromised word, the devil advances. This is why the church is the problem and it's the solution. And we don't realize this. I'm old enough to remember that when the people they used to pray, you'd feel the power in the church. The churches are dead. I've been across a lot of churches across this country. I know there's a remnant, but I'll tell you what, most of our churches are dead. And there's a lot of people think they're going somewhere, but they ain't going nowhere when that horn blows. I'll tell you, we need to get that conviction back in our churches. Like I said, when I was a kid, I'd see people going up the altar, and they pray, not for 1 minute, not for 2 minutes. They pray sometimes by the hour. And I remember the pastor saying about how he had to go up there and after church and wipe the tears off the altar. And he said he'd give a call for sinners to come forward because he said if you don't come forward, he said there's not going to be room for you up here because the saints would go up there. Now we just go to church and just play church. And I'm telling you, this thing is winding down. You might think that I'm just talking and blowing air, but I'm telling you what, I'm not ignorant to the Spirit. And I'm telling you what right now, that this thing is winding down and people are playing church, and it's going to end up with a lot of people sitting here when it's all over.
Barry, as you were talking, I was thinking of Peter Dynica, who started the Slavic Gospel Association. I heard him as a child growing up, and he said those words, much prayer, much power. Little prayer, little power. No prayer, no power. And yeah, indeed. Thank you. And we so often treat prayer just like a spare tire. You bring it out only in case of an emergency. So, yeah.
Well, people don't see their need. People don't see their need for God anymore. They got what they need. They put him up on the shelf, and when they need him, they call on him. But you know what? God doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
You need to seek. He said, when those that seek me early, he said, I shall be found of them. That's why we can't get a prayer through for people that are sick and need healing and such, because we've got condemnation between us and God. I mean, this is a daily thing. This is a thing you seek after moment by moment.
Yeah. Amen. Thank you, Barry.
Sure.
Let's go to Mike in Pennsylvania. Mike, you're on the air.
Yes, I just wanted to make a comment. I think this is all part of the end times where they're going to take an elderly lady and go against her family and violate all their rights.
Yeah. I
mean, it's incredible. I just hope they get good attorneys and go after these people to stop this, because this is going to continue. This is just the beginning of them and getting rid of the elderly people, because there's going to be nothing left anyway. They stole everything, and they're all thieves.
Mike,
that's how I feel about it.
Yeah, this is going on in the state of or the country of Canada, in which they have opened the doors wide open for this medical aid in dying, medical assistance in dying, and we are seeing the numbers escalate year after year after year. And it's the government has interest in promoting this, and regarding the finding good legal assistance. I don't think you're going to find that in Canada to fight what the country is making available all across the nation there, sadly.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm afraid it's going to continue down here, too. I mean, you got all these liberal states, and they're going to end up doing the same thing. Yeah. And as far as Jesus goes, I know we're right on the end times. I think if we got 5 years left, we're lucky. That's my opinion.
Could be today. Could be today. Thank you, Mike. John in New Jersey, you're on the air.
Hey, sir. Yeah. Wow. There's one thing that people I haven't heard being addressed or talked about and mentioned, and it's the bizarre and devastating weather impacting our nation, including Puerto Rico and Hawaii. And it's not by chance that God can use the weather as an instrument of judgment, and it tells about that in Job chapter 37, how the Lord uses the weather for correction, his land, or for his mercy's sake. Sir, we have 10 states that now allow abortion up to the 9th month, and do you think God in heaven, the Lord, winks at that and says, oh, well, it's America, Trump's my president, he's not going to tolerate it. And where are the pastors speaking out against this stuff, telling the people our nation is under judgment, and we should be praying and confessing the sins of our nation like Daniel did?
Yeah.
Daniel did that in chapter 9.
Indeed.
And sir, I'm like, we have such an opportunity to share the gospel. And brother, I tell you, the Holy Ghost is setting up opportunities for me here in Jersey just to say Jesus, and heads will turn or they don't, but they heard the name of Jesus.
Yeah.
And if I can say one last thing, I drive a car and the spare tires on the back of the car with a cover on it. And 2 years ago, God prompted me. I say God, the Holy Ghost prompted me to write on a piece of weather-resistant material 3 crosses and John chapter 3, 16, 17, and 18. And I have it on to this day, and I've seen the reaction of people when they get behind the car and they see the cross. They either back up and they stay away, or they really pass me real quick.
Hey, we're out of time. John, thank you for your call here today and the passion that you have. Certainly, we are living in times, as Paul called them, perilous times. We need to advance the gospel in such a time as this. By the way, it is Friday. The Lord's Day is coming. Trust you'll be in a Bible-believing, Bible-teaching local church. Thanks for listening.
You've been listening to Crosstalk via satellite and the internet from VCY America. Views expressed may or may not be those of this station. For a CD of today's program, send a donation of $6 or more to VCY Tape Ministry, 3434 West Kilbourne Avenue, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53208, or download by RSS or podcast from crosstalkamerica.com. And join us again for Crosstalk.